Money, the one thing that makes the world go round. We all spend some part of our lives each day trying to earn, spend, or save money. But often money needs to be shared with others. Especially for those of us who live very far away from our families back home, we often need to send money abroad. And doing this can be an expensive and complicated process, especially when banks are involved. This is where Wise, or what was called Transferwise, comes into play. A UK company which was started in 2011 has recently announced that they're going to IPO their stock on the London Stock Exchange. In this video, I'm going to be talking about whether Wise is a good investment to add into your growth portfolio, and I'll be doing a comprehensive stock review based on my own analysis. Hello and welcome to The Nimble Nomad. My name is Arjun and this is the channel where we talk about money and investing related tips, tricks and hacks to survive and thrive in the UK. So in case you've been following the financial news over the past week, Wise, also known as Transferwise until recently, decided that they were going to become a publicly listed company. And the company decided to list on the UK Stock Exchange as opposed to the US through an IPO. Now, not only is this the first major tech company in recent times to list on the UK Stock Exchange, it was also the first company ever to do a direct listing on the stock exchange. So what that basically means is they listed existing shares on the stock exchange rather than create new shares for retail investors like you and I to buy. But what the heck is Wise, and why should you even care and consider investing in it? So in this video, I'm going to do a comprehensive stock review of Wise or Transferwise as a business, and I'm also going to be talking about what my evaluation of Wise as a business is from a fair value perspective, and whether it makes sense for you to invest in Wise based on my own personal analysis. So let's dive into it. Now, before we jump into the actual specifics of the analysis, I do want to state that I've got timestamps in the video description below. So in case you're interested in a particular aspect of Wise as a business, then I'm happy for you to jump to any of those. But I do recommend that you watch the entire video because it all links up. So Wise, or what was until recently known as Transferwise, is basically a company which specializes in money transfers and payments. The company was started in the UK by two Estonians, David and Christo, who started the company in 2011. The company was born out of solving a problem where basically Christo was trying to send money back to Estonia, which is where he's from. And he realized that there were really expensive fees associated with sending that money, especially which banks were charging. So in order to actually overcome this, the story goes that basically Christo decided that he would send money to David, his friend's UK bank account, and in return, David would transfer the equivalent amount to Christo's Estonian bank account. Now, on that basis, they actually decided that there was probably a solution here, and that's how Transferwise, or what is known as now Wise, was created. The company basically has three main products. Wise, which is basically for personal or retail users, which offers them the ability to send low-cost money transfers cross-border and allows them to transact in multi-currency. Wise Business, which is basically a similar account which has actually been created for business users, but also allows multiple users within a company to transact using that account. And there have been 150,000 businesses that have signed up for it. And the last one is the Wise platform, which is basically a network which allows partners or other banks to use Transferwise's transfer mechanisms and international money remittance service in order to offer this to their own banking users as well. So basically the likes of Monzo or any other bank which wanted to offer international money transfers at a low cost would use Wise's platform in order to do so. What are the advantages for Wise as a business, and why should you consider investing in them on that basis? So do they actually have a future? So Wise basically offers those three things that I've talked about, but let's just run through the actual advantage. So Wise basically offers you really low fees and basically an efficient platform to send and receive money. So they have a multi-currency account, and their money transfer business that is their primary source of revenue is actually extremely fast and extremely efficient. So they basically boast of their fees being up to 3 times cheaper than PayPal and up to 8 times cheaper than traditional banks. Now, not only that, I personally have been using Wise since 2014 to transfer money from the UK to India. And more recently, they've opened up the Korean won. So my wife has been using them to transfer money to Korea as well. So in both cases, I can tell you that the money not only has a very low fees associated with it, but the rate and speed at which the money gets transferred is ridiculous. So within a matter of minutes, if I initiate a transfer, the money reaches the destination account. Now, the other aspect of Wise as a business is that they are the true innovator disruptors within this space. So within this whole money remittance space. So they were the first company to come up with this whole concept of low cost money transfers. And not only that, they came up with this whole concept of multi-currency accounts, which actually really enables people to integrate with other financial institutions. So if I want to open a US bank account, I can do that with a multi-currency account, and I can integrate into their broader financial system in the US using that multi-currency account in the US. So really speaking, they offer something truly unique, which I have not come across previously. Now, despite these advantages from a pure business perspective, there are some key risks associated to Wise. So Wise is operating basically in a overcrowded market of fintech. So Wise is basically not the only player in this space. There are some pre-existing incumbents, and there are some new entrants which can enter, or rather have entered into this space. So the key risk to basically Wise is that somebody else comes along with a better product and a lower fees and starts eating into Wise's lunch. Now, the other flip side from a risk perspective is that the banks themselves catch up to Wise and realize that, you know what, we want to play within this space by offering a low cost money transfer service as well. Now, in both cases, I actually think those risks are very unlikely to materialize in the short to medium term. And the main reason for that is basically, if you think about it, Wise has been the first mover, or they have the first mover advantage, and they have a huge chunk of the market share. So to give you context, in 2020, Wise transferred $42 billion worth of money transfers. Now, according to a report that I read on the World Bank, basically the expected total market share for money remittances in 2021 was expected to be $470 billion. So approximately 8% of that market is currently controlled by Wise itself. So there's basically a huge market for them to play in. The second thing is, when you talk about banks, now banks typically don't want you to transfer money. They don't want you to take the money out of their holding and send it somewhere else. So it's very unlikely that banks will enter into this space. And if they do, they are usually very, very slow to move. And it's unlikely that they would be able to offer you a, very similar, fast and efficient mode and mechanism of being able to transfer money as Transferwise have. Now, the other flip side to this is, rather than actually competing with Transferwise, what's also happening is a lot of the banks are actually using Wise or Transferwise as a partner. So Wise has partnered with Monzo as one of the disruptor fintechs or challenger banks in the UK. So if you wanted to send money using Monzo internationally, then most likely it would be on Transferwise or Wise's platform. So this is happening. So I don't think these risks will actually materialize. So key things to consider again if you want to invest. This brings me on to the financials of Wise as a business. Now, obviously, Wise decided to list publicly on the stock market, and there's no point talking about the advantages and disadvantages of the company and the investment opportunity without actually looking at some of the financials associated with Wise. So as a requirement, in order to be able to list publicly in the UK, Wise issued a prospectus document. Now that prospectus document is 252 pages long, and I actually went through a significant proportion of that document. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save you having to go through all of that. You're more than welcome to read through all of it yourself if you want to invest in Wise, and I recommend that you do. But I'll summarize some of the key points that stuck out for me personally. The company has been profitable for the last 5 years, and they have had a compounded annual growth rate, or CAGR, of averaging of 42% for the last 3 years. Not only have they had this extensive growth rate, they have also had their margins, or their profit margins, remain steady at about 62% for the last 3 years. The CFO has actually said that looking forward, they actually project a annual growth rate for their revenue and EBITDA at 20%. And despite being a relatively young company with limited sort of resources, they have very limited amount of debt. So they have a significant amount of cash and cash related equivalents on their balance sheet, and they're able to easily cover their debt requirements. So the likelihood basically of them going broke is very low. So all of this is fine, but what is the actual valuation of the share based on the financials that are available in the prospectus? So I used multiple different types of valuation techniques to come up with a fair value for what I think the fair value of Wise's shares is. And my valuation was that at £11 per share would be a fair value, and I've done a discounted cash flow in order to come to that. So I'll add a link to the workings of that in the video description below, so you can go and check that out and download that if you want to access the information. So all of the information was extracted from their prospectus, where I extracted the financials, came up with my own model for what the estimates were based on what the CFO has said on their own page, and then I calculated the fair value, which is £11 per share. So the share actually for the company listed at £8 per share, which was a direct listing, so no new shares were issued. And by close of Friday, the trading value was £9.60. So based on my calculations, it's still trading below fair value, and based on the estimates that I have for the next few years. So it could be a sensible option to buy now. So in my opinion, what is the conclusion? So I honestly think that Wise is worth buying, and I am going to be investing into Wise and adding it as a growth stock into my investment portfolio. So I've traditionally always recommended in investing in dividend paying stocks. So this is going to be the first stock that I buy purely because it's a growth stock. The main reason why I think it's a good investment is because not only is the product and service fantastic, and I use them on a regular basis, but they actually have really good growth prospects. So one, because they have projected that they're going to grow at approximately 20% per year in the medium term, according to the CFO. And two, because they're actually going into some really important markets. So they've actually had a tie-up with Visa, and they've basically partnered with them in order to facilitate some of their cross-border account payments on the Visa Connect cloud. They are also entering into the emerging markets, which are basically the biggest ones for money transfers. So they've recently opened or started up their service in Indonesia at the beginning of this year, and they started offering their debit cards in Japan at the end of last year in 2020. So I personally think that they are doing all the right things. The management on top of that is actually pretty solid, and this is exhibited by the fact that they have a strong ethos of being transparent. And this was actually relevant from a direct listing perspective, where the cost consciousness was really important factor. So I think this is my own personal take and what I'm going to be doing with my own portfolio. You don't need to take my word blindly. Please make sure you do your own research and investment analysis before you consider investing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.